Okay. Hi, Leo. Third time lucky. Hopefully I get it within the 20 minutes this time. So this is my assignment with the data cleaning for starters. No duplicate values were found. No blanks were found. There were 6 spelling errors, which was homeware, and I replaced them with the correct spelling. And I replaced all the store codes with geographical names. For the cleaning, I noticed that the pre-clean summary statistics of the data set, the mean was a lot higher than the median. The standard error was very high. The standard deviation was very high. The maximum was very high as well. So I broke all of the stores and down and did a summary statistics for the whole store, clothing and footwear, non-promotion and yes promotion in each of the departments, clothing, footwear, food, homeware, and I did that for every store. And there were a number of outliers in some of the departments. So Aberdeen, Dundee, Edinburgh twice, Glasgow, St Andrews twice. For most of them, the anomalies were clear. Yeah, the anomalies were clear, and because they were clear because they exceeded 390,000 total hub capacity, so they were logistically impossible. So I just replaced them with the mean across the same department across Q1, and there were 2 other outliers which were within capacity, but one in Edinburgh, one in St Andrews, and but they were both way higher than the next highest sales, and the mean of the rest of the sales, so they seem strange. And especially Edinburgh, when there was no promotion, and it was much higher than the other sales which did have promotions, and the promotions revenue was higher than the non-promotion. So that stuck out. Now with both of them, I just removed the n number as if the n number was a typo, and then the resulting value that was left fitted nicely into the range of the rest of the sales statistics. So then I redid the summary statistics after I'd removed all of the anomalies that I thought were worth removing. And this is the clean data set. The mean got a lot closer to the median. Standard error dropped absolutely loads. The standard deviation also dropped absolutely loads, both by more than 10 times. And the maximum dropped to within the daily maximum hub capacity. Also, every anomaly that was removed from every store, every department, every promotion, I re-cleaned as well and did the summary statistics again, as you can see on these white boxes, and just the same trend as well. Mean got close to the median, standard error, standard deviation, and maximum dropped. Now, with the mean moving closer to the median, it would seem that using averages for analysis and means for replacing anomalies was more reliable and accurate and appropriate. Standard error and the standard deviation dropping means that can be more confident that the data set is accurate of reality and therefore usable. So the data set and the averages are appropriate for using, such as in here in the dashboard. So this is the dashboard. We've just got some charts on the left to show how the mean and median got closer together after cleaning here. So increase confidence that the data set is valid and accurate and representative of reality. And then also just the changes in standard error and standard deviation before and after cleaning, just to show that the data set is valid. Sorry, mean and median together shows that the means are more reliable, more appropriate for use. So here we've got lots of pivot charts built off pivot tables with integrated slices as well. These are really good for allowing you to change different variables within and get different insights and different graphs without taking up too much space or wasting too much time. So that's what I'm going to do Here we've got the sales performance of each store. Clearly Glasgow is the biggest revenue generator for Marks and Spencer's, with Edinburgh second, and then the rest bunched up quite closely in here. Okay, so you can see clearly that all the stores seem to take a dip in February. Revenue drops in February, especially Edinburgh and Glasgow are the highest ones. So if we go to February, if you go to clothing and footwear, you can see that that's a big problem in Glasgow, but not so much everywhere else. Food is stable. Homeware is really bad for Glasgow and Edinburgh and most of the other stores. If you go to February, you can see that for homeware, Edinburgh and Glasgow don't actually have promotions on. So whereas everywhere else does, and they work successfully. So at least in terms of Edinburgh and Glasgow, they could put on promotions for homeware to minimise all that revenue that is lost in February. And then in clothing and footwear as well, with Glasgow, that takes a huge drop. But again, in February, Glasgow doesn't have a promotion. Glasgow doesn't have a promotion. So if you bring in the rest of these, none of them, apart from Perth, have one either actually. But Perth is Perth is good, relatively speaking, make almost a quarter more revenue. So the Edinburgh and Glasgow should put on promotions in homeware in February to stop that huge revenue drop, and then Glasgow should also put on a clothing and footwear promotion as well, because it seems like that might be useful. Yeah, that's just one demonstration of how you can use the slices to change how the charts look and how useful it is to have them integrated. So you can see, you can diagnose problems and solutions. Down here we have department sales performances, and you can clearly see that food, which is orange, is by far the highest revenue generator, and that's true overall, and then also in January, February, and March. Food is by far the highest revenue generator. Now, if you take out food, you can see that clothing and footwear also is higher than homeware for most of the stores apart from these two, and that's true overall in January, in February, and in March. So it seems that homeware is the least popular, least sales revenue generating department. So Marks and Spencer should focus on product development and market development as well, market expansion, so they can try and increase the sales there, stop being so overly reliant on food, and then backed up by clothing and footwear. You can also use this to not just compare how departments perform within stores, but also how they compare across stores. And you can see across the months the ratios of the differences between stores and how each store performs in each department compared to each other doesn't really change all that much. The differences between the bars pretty much stay the same. So stores have a relatively stable performance differences between each other over the months. It's just the internal differences that are so large. Here we've got the efficacy of promotions, so how well the promotions work in every department. You can see clothing and footwear. Clothing and footwear overall, promotions seem to work in every store, increase revenue generation in every store. Now this is based on average sales revenue rather than sum, because the split between yes promotion and no promotion is not 50-50, so some would have been inaccurate or inappropriate, so that's why I'm using average. It's a bit more accurate. So overall, clothing and footwear promotions are good, generate extra revenue in every department, and that's true across January. February, no one really used them apart from Perth, but it worked. And then March, again, everyone that did them seemed to benefit and gain extra revenue from them. Food, overall, it seems like those which use food promotions gained slightly more revenue. But once you look a bit more in depth, in January, there's barely any revenue gain from promotions. February, same again in the stores that use them. And March, same again, barely any revenue gain. Now, but because they're selling to gain that same amount of revenue or slightly extra revenue, they have to sell a lot more units because the price has gone down. They'll be increasing their delivery costs for selling more units. So I think with the marginal increase in revenue, it probably isn't going to be worth the extra delivery costs. So I think having food promotions across stores is actually reduces the profitability or the profit margins of the stores, the profit levels of the stores. So Marks and Spencer should actually stop doing food promotions in their stores. But with homeware, similar to clothing and footwear, they seem to be very productive, with promotions generating extra revenue across all stores on the face of it. And in January, all stores that do them make loads of extra revenue. February, like we said, most of them work. Edinburgh and Glasgow don't use them, but as suggested, they should start using them because it seems they work, and that would help them increase the revenue that was dropped there. And in March, again, those stores which do use homeware promotions seem to generate extra revenue. So Marks and Spencer should use clothing and footwear and homeware promotions, especially homeware, in February to get rid of these big dips, but they should stop doing food promotions. This chart helps obviously see how well the promotions are working. On its face, it does seem like promotions might not be that useful, but that's one of the drawbacks of using pivot tables and pivot charts. You have to, with so many different factors, you have to dive deep into them to see the insights. Now this is a chart on store revenue per £1 of delivery, which is kind of a measure of efficiency and profitability. Sterling, exceptionally high profit levels. They make about £50 for every £1 on delivery. Edinburgh is almost 30. Sterling's quite a low revenue producer. Edinburgh is very high. So because of the high profit margins and the revenue generated, Marks and Spencer should focus on increasing sales in Stirling and Edinburgh to make most use of the overall revenue gains, but also profit gains, profitability levels as well. Okay. Monte Carlo simulation. Here we have the data, Aberdeen, homeware, non-promotion. Some of the things rows are hiding here, which is why you can't see the whole set. Here's a business model that was also created into a histogram over here to figure out the probability of loss, but also the probability of the degree of loss as well, which has been put in chart form back here. So at 60%, you can see with a random number, a random daily profit, net profit. At 60% margin, the probability of loss is between 45 and 52%, with it mainly being £0 to £500 loss, about 10% roughly £500 to £1,000 loss, and a very small chance of 1,000 to 1,500 loss. And then with profit margins, roughly 40% probability of £0 to £500 profit, about 10%, just over 10% on average, 0.5 to £1,000 profit, and about 1 or 2%, 1,000 to 1.5. Every so often, there's a small chance you'll get 1.5 to 2k profit. If you move that up to 70%, probability of loss shoots right down to about 6 to 8 or 9%, and the probability of big losses, as seen from the chart to the right, is massively reduced, and it's pretty much just most of that probability of loss is 0 to 500, whereas the probability of high profit also shoots up massively. So it's most likely you make £500 to £1,000 profit, but then there's also chances that you could make £2,000 to £3,000 profit as well. So that 10% jump in margin is really, really substantial in terms of how likely you are to lose money, how bad those losses would be, but then also how likely you are to gain higher levels of profit. I also did a two-way data table. That was to show from 60 to 70% loss margins, and the probability of some form of loss, if you have a 60 to 70% margin but unknown, is about 23, 24% loss on any probability of loss on any given day. And that's just the rest of it. That's the random thing with 1,000 runs as a histogram. Transport costs. Well, just based on this, they should really try and focus, get it up to 70%, but actually 65% would also be really good, because that substantially reduces the probability of loss by over half, and also the probability of how bad the loss will be. There's a much better chance that it's not going to be as bad, and it pretty much removes the probability of the worst types of losses, but then also significantly increases the chances of making good profits as well, as shown here. Marks and Spencers should at least try and cement 65% gross profit margins. Obviously 70% is the best as well. Here we've got transport costs, and we use the solver in here to figure out how much of each should go to each store. The total delivered is on capacity for Brechin and Falkirk, just under total capacity for East Kilbride, so it all fits. These are all the costs, and total delivery cost is 22,858. And then there's also just a quick pivot chart where you can show just to find out how much each store gets from where. It's just Aberdeen gets this much from Brechin, this much from East Kilbride, none from Falkirk. Again, you can just use these pivot charts to find out how much each hub distributes to each store. It's useful to see very clearly. And that's it finished. I also just have some notes on critical awareness. So the key things I learned, or Marks and Spencers can learn, is that all stores do worse in February, mainly due to homeware, especially in Glasgow and Edinburgh, which are the two highest revenue producers. So they should add promotions because they seem to work elsewhere in the homeware department. Glasgow should also have, that's in February, especially Glasgow should also have a clothing and footwear promotion in February to increase revenue. Food is the highest revenue stream across stores by a significant amount. Marks and Spencer's should improve their homeware offerings. Stores and departments consistently perform about the same in comparison to each other. I learned, and Marks and Spencer should know that a small number of outliers can invalidate a whole data set. So good, accurate collection is important, and Marks and Spencer's need to pay particular attention to Edinburgh and St Andrews, as they both had two upper outliers. I learned how well promos work. They do seem to work apart from in food, so they shouldn't do food promotions, but they should do clothing and footwear and homeware, especially in Glasgow and Edinburgh. Already explained that the profit, they should invest in Edinburgh and Stirling, especially because they have the highest profitability and profit margins. So that'll be the best return on investment. They should try and get 65% profit margins in Aberdeen homeware to significantly reduce the risk of loss and the scale of loss, and also significantly increase the risk, the likelihood of profit and good profit. And transportation, they should follow the Solver equation and use that to make the most cost-efficient logistics delivery as possible. Thank you.